Thank you for clicking on the help video. So in this example, we have that f and g are represented by this table here, and we want to determine the composition of these inverse functions. So we want to, for part A, step one would be to first determine the inverse value of g at -8. So that's going to give us an answer. And then the second step is to then use that answer and evaluate the inverse of f at, again, like I said, at that number. So we need to look at the inverse of both of them. We can draw a new table and identify the new x and y values for the inverse by switching these numbers, or we could just work smarter, and instead of just inverting and create a new table, we just invert the titles. So we're going to ignore this title up here, and we're going to call this the x and this the y to the inverse of g. And the same thing with f. So instead of creating a new table where we just simply switch the x and y's, they just switch the labels. This will be the y, this would be the x for the inverse of f. So let's look at what the value is right here. So again, so for part A, like I mentioned earlier, we want to do these two steps. So first we want to look at the inverse of g, which is this table right here, and we're going to plug in -8. So this will make the x value -8 and the output value 7. So our answer here would be 7. We're now going to use that 7 as the input value to the inverse of f. So the inverse of f would be this table where these are the x values, and again here are the y values. So we're going to look at the x value of 7, and we see that the y value is 8. So the answer to part A equals 8. And we want to do the exact same thing with, essentially the same thing in part B. The only difference is that the composition is opposite, because now we're doing g inverse of f inverse. Step one would be to get the inverse of f at 8. So let's look at the table for the inverse of f, which is this one right here. We're going to input the 8. So that means that the x value will be 8. And we see that the y value is 7. And step 2 now is to evaluate the inverse of g at that number 7. So looking at the table for the inverse of g, having again the input value be 7, we see that the output value is y. I'm sorry, the output value is 8. Y, the output value of y is 8. So the answer to the second one is 8. And there you have just coincidence, just pure coincidence that they happen to be the same number. Again, on both of them, we plug in -8, get +8. We plug in +8, and pure coincidence, we also get 8 there. Okay, well, that you have your answers. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video was helpful.